Hi everyone, welcome to this session. This is going to be a little bit of a deep dive into the life cycle of businesses and products, and what this means for business model innovation, and especially for startups looking to do something disruptive. Normally I cover this in one of my webinars where we touch on it briefly for 3 or 4 minutes, but today in this session I'm going to dive deeply into it and to try and explain a lot more why the business life cycle is super important for startups looking at creating something particularly innovative. I'll say up front that if you're working in a very new area, very chaotic area, this probably is not going to help you that much. If you are targeting companies that have been around a lot for a while, where there are relatively stable markets, or a stable market is starting to collapse into chaos, then this will be exceptionally valuable. What I'm going to try and do over the next, I think, 30 to 40 minutes, it may end up being a little bit longer or shorter, is to help you understand the battlefield, if you like, because as a startup, the problem that you're solving, the solution that you're coming up with, the business model that you're wrapping this all up in, it doesn't exist in isolation. And so we've got a number of layers. You've got the industry layer. What is the industry focusing on? What is the industry like? You've got the competitor layer, and then finally you've got your own corporate business model layer. And is bearing this in mind for all three. And I think in this webinar I'm talking mostly about the industry level, so you can then sort of take that and take the lessons, delve down into the individual business layer itself. So we're going to be working with the business life cycle. So if you think about a human, humans, they start off as babies, wander around on four legs, crawling. As they get a little bit older, they start standing up. Then they're running in the middle of their life, yeah, like me, long distance runner, awesome. And then slowly get more and more old, and eventually get a cane to sort of help you walk around before ending up in a bed and eventually sort of popping your clogs. Which I have no idea what it means, but it's a euphemism for dying anyway, for those of you who don't use English as a native language. So humans have this life cycle from birth to growth to death and beyond, and businesses have a similar one, and this is a simplified version over hundreds and thousands of businesses of broadly what it looks like. And I'll spend the next 5 minutes sort of talking you through the innovation and the life cycle of a business and product. Next. So first of all, you get a disruptive innovation. This can be anything from figuring out how to put phosphor on the end of a match. It can be figuring out how to put phosphor on the end of a match that doesn't go bang unless it's struck on the side of it. It could be figuring out that oil, black sticky stuff that grows, comes out of the ground in Philadelphia, can be used for driving engines. Yeah, it can be something like an operating system like Windows OS. It can be many other things. So as startups, we're usually coming up with disruptive innovations, and quite often there's a nice little bit of growth to start with, but then there is this chasm. Yeah, people just don't get through it. There's a problem getting it into the mass market. It stays as a niche. it's very nice, but no, the mass market doesn't really use it. Segway, Oculus Rift would be a couple of examples like that. The BMW smart car, again, all examples of disruptive innovations that really didn't jump the chasm, right? After at the disruptive innovation stage, you often see one or two companies have the idea, and then an increasingly large number of companies start entering the space. They see that the innovation is solving a real problem, that there is a need there, and if this is real, we manage to let me get the laser pointer out. If it is real, yeah, they manage to jump the chasm over into this bit. And then in real life, what you have is you then have lots and lots of companies playing around in this area. So let me give you an example. I mean, everybody thinks of the car industry. How many car manufacturers do you think there were in, what is it, let's say 1900, 1905, something like that, remembering that 80 years later there were 3: Chrysler, Ford and General Motors. Well, back at the turn of the 20th century, I've seen numbers suggesting that there were well over 1,000 car manufacturers in the United States alone. Well, yeah, and what was happening is pretty much every market that you get tens of thousands or thousands of new entrants coming in. And now that they've seen that there is something, that there is a disruptive innovation that can have an impact on the market, everybody and his wife has a gold rush and charges in. And you think it's exactly going out to California in the 1890s, or the Klondike a few years later in the search for gold. Everybody knows there's gold out there. Everybody heads out and starts digging, churning the land over in the desperate hope to find nuggets of gold. And what happens, this is known as product innovation. There's a huge churn of people try just about every different type of innovation to solve the problem. So in the early 20th century, in the car industry, you had internal combustion engine cars, you had hydraulic cars, you had diesel cars, you had steam cars, you had pneumatic cars, which I'm sure are different from steam cars, but not quite sure how. You even had electric cars. So that's 6 different energy systems to start with, let alone the huge variety in braking systems, in axle systems, in suspension systems, in driving systems, in gearing systems. Wow, the number of varieties probably isn't as large as you imagine from that list. Because often people steal from other people, and reverse engineers have good ideas. So you've got a huge number of product innovations playing around. After a while though, next slide. After a while though, it settles down. You figure out which are the product innovations that actually get things to work. Internal combustion engine proved a lot more successful at producing a stable energy generating platform for the car than electricity did in the early 20th century. At the start of the 21st century, that's no longer the case, and electricity is starting to lead as a platform. Before in the 19th century, steam seemed to be the disruptive innovation, but after a while it tends to settle down, and the industry starts to agree on which innovations are absolutely critical and are going to become the standards in the new industry, which innovations are features, nice to have, didn't really work, it was worth a try, it's a wild goose chase. Oh no, that's a disaster. We're not talking about that. Starting to figure those out. And so the shift in an industry moves from product innovations to process innovations, and so this is when the bean counters start coming in. You start looking at Kaizen and Six Sigma and ISO 9001 and quality management systems. It's like, we know what we're going to be doing. We're not going to be doing step changes in capacity or performance improvement. What we're going to be focusing on is, can we make this slightly better every year, slightly cheaper every year, slightly more reliable every year, and we're figuring out the best way of doing it. So a lot of the time, the early product innovations, they're often a little bit jury-rigged. In startups speak here, you've got a website that looks as if it's all automated at the back end, but actually you got people frantically still playing around with spreadsheets and telephones and string and pencils trying to make things worse. But as we go into this stage, you know exactly what it is going to make. You know the specifications, you know the parameters, and the rate of change in the product has decreased to such an extent that you can invest significantly in the processes, because the processes are hugely expensive to change once you've set them up to automate them. I mean, going back to the car factory example, setting up a whole car factory is cost tens of millions. Setting up a fab plant costs billions for the chip industry, and everything is really tightly controlled. When you're still in the Wild West, you don't have that same process control, and so often early products are a lot more unreliable. The quality isn't so good. So you move over into the process innovation stage. Next, we then start moving into a steady state where the market is really maturing. You may have some incremental innovations. They will come in if they're not going to be really disrupting the process or the product platform that you've already got. Very little is going to be happening here or here. We're into a process of stability, and so it's sort of sticking with the car. We're now thinking about sort of bumper changes, slight changes in aerodynamic styling. Have you noticed, for example, over the last 20 years, how all cars have a very similar shape? Because that is optimized for aerodynamics and fuel efficiency. So you've then got very little that you can do because you've got a stable platform, and now up here, slow improvements, making it slightly better. But where you start getting the big improvements are the marketing innovations, because you haven't got any new products or features to sell. Sort of the time when you sort of, one year you get electric windows, the next year what is it, a sunroof coming out, the year after that adding a CD player to the car, the year after that a GPS. Though the time for those is all gone. Equally, the time of process innovations, where you can say, and this car is 50% more reliable, or does 20% more miles to the gallon than last year. Those have all gone. So it's increasingly hard to sell a car based on its features and benefits. So you start getting a lot more marketing innovations that are increasingly selling the product or the service based on its emotional appeal. And if you look at the last 10 to 15 years in the car industry, what we see is the ultimate driving machine for for BMW, and it's like your emotional response to owning the car, your emotional response to driving the car, rather than any particular talk about the features or the benefits. So this is where the innovation starts to come from then. And then the company starts going into this decline, and we're now seeing this with all the traditional manufacturers in the making internal combustion cars, in that, okay, we've got another disruptive innovation, or a set of them, coming over here, which are electric cars. And they're thinking, how do we respond? Because our existing factories are totally built around drivetrains, big engines with thousands of suppliers managing that supply chain, and this is all challenged. If we go for an electric car, we have to abandon a lot of fixed assets and investment in intellectual property, etc., etc. But at the same time, if we don't do that, then we risk our company being hammered. So we start sort of coming up with business model innovations and things that I'd expect to see happening in the car industry, splitting companies in two, one maintaining the old ICE platform, others sort of the other parts are focusing on electric engines, different ways as they come up with the different business models to cope with this decline from this long mature cycle. And this bit here can last for many years. This can last for 10, 20, 50, 100 years. I mean, in the electricity generating industry, this is now probably lasted for pretty much 100 years or so. There have been few process or product innovations in that time. Whereas in other industries, say in computer hard drives, this period was often 1 to 2 years before you went through that whole cycle. Again, certainly in the 70s, 80s and 90s, it seems to be lengthening now. And then finally you start coming up with structural innovations, as basically you realize that the old business model is no longer working and the whole thing is falling apart. If you look at, say, what Yahoo has been doing over the last 5 to 10 years, is basically the business model doesn't compete with Google. It doesn't really fit into any of the niches. It hasn't managed to create its own niche, and so they're slowly ripping themselves apart, making structural innovation changes. So this is the big picture. Let me just wet my whistle. And as we go through, do ask questions. I try and respond to all the comments that I get in as much detail as I can, and also do head over to Denis-Oakley.com. I write a lot more there, or subscribe to my newsletter, and each week I try and come up with sort of something interesting, disruptive, challenging viewpoints to help you create better businesses, new ventures, or startups. So there's a chap 50 or 60 years ago, Thomas Kuhn, and he talked about the structure of scientific revolutions. What happens is, he says, is that when you have a set of beliefs, and we can imagine this as a belief system, entrepreneurs start having a beliefs about what can change. Yeah, they go out, they try and make those changes. Yeah, with the product innovations, they get stronger and stronger beliefs that they are going to be able to make changes in the way that an industry works. As they move into process innovations, they're seeing that they are making real changes to the world, real changes to the people that they want to serve, the industry, the market. And then up here, their beliefs, yeah, we know the right way to solve this problem. It turns into dogma, it turns into something fairly rigid. They don't end up sort of changing very much about what they believe for a long time, and it slowly becomes more and more crystalline, sort of grime and crud around the edge, until they're unable to see the world as ever having been anything different. They forget back down here, they were heroes changing the world, sort of rebels with a cause, if you like. But by the time they've got up here, they've become the establishment. But just like back down here, and there was somebody up there who's sort of coming out with disruptive innovations and sort of different ways of looking at things. They were able to say, okay, there are lots of little disruptive innovations all the time hitting up here, all the time hitting up here. Now, a lot of the time, it's going to be quite those disruptive innovations. You go bam, yeah, sort of $1 billion company versus a small $10,000 funded startup. Bam, yeah. I mean, it's just a smear on the desk as you hit the mosquito, and it's sort of bleh, he's barely even noticeable. You don't actually, you have to check to see if there's a smear because you don't actually feel your impact on the mosquito, and that is what it feels like to a big company for most of these disruptive innovations. Yeah, they're killed off. The market moves on, just blithely unaware that they're happening, but where there are problems, where there is something underlying, you start to get what are called anomalies, which are areas of pain that the existing industry can't solve. Let's go back to our car industry for a few minutes. The car industry has got these, it's got a problem with the environment, climate change. They use lots of petrol. Oh, that's bad. That's what we call an anomaly. It's not something that the existing business model can fix. How can the car industry solve the climate change problem? Yeah, it can't, and that's what is an anomaly. So for another example, say for Intel, yeah, it's based all of its chips on standard Newtonian kind of physics principles in silicon wafers. But what happens now that we're starting to get computers using qubits with quantum entanglement, which are built in utterly different ways and work in totally weird ways, so that a huge amount of the IP that Intel has created is irrelevant. These are anomalies. Is there going to be a place for Intel? Is the quantum computer just a disruptive innovation that can just be a mosquito smeared on the table? Just no. But these anomalies build up, and slowly the weight of anomalies building up is what starts to bring the business model down into this long-term structural mess. One good couple of good examples. Let's have a look at the first of all the steel industry. Yep. So the steel industry got up to about here, probably 1930, 1940. They've been in, yes, somewhere like this, and up to about 1970 or so, there were continual process innovations. There is still process and incremental innovations going on, but it's going down here as a driver of economic force. I mean, Andrew Carnegie was one of the wealthiest men in America. He created one of the most powerful companies in America. Where are steel companies in the Fortune 500 today? I don't think there are any. Nucor maybe, US Steel may just be in the US 500, but in most of the rest of the world they're not significant companies, even though they still make billions, because they've been left behind. Aluminium has gone out and beaten them. A whole new range of materials has come in. Concrete has taken over the places. Plastic has taken over the places, and steel never really managed to respond to those. Another one is big oil, with over the last 10 years, again, you've seen huge amounts of solar power, the price of solar power collapsing quickly. So British Petroleum the other week said, we're not going to be in the oil business after 2030 or 2050, I can't remember what date. So these are anomalies, and they're starting to hammer businesses. Right, okay, so this is the overall framework, and that's kind of the theory that you need to understand. So When is the best time to do a startup? Well, if you're targeting an industry, so most startups are going to be targeting a problem. If you're not, I hope you've got God on your side and a shed load of cash, because otherwise it's going to be super difficult to get anywhere. But most startups, entrepreneurs, are targeting a problem. Now, if you're targeting a company or an industry that's mature, yeah, you need to have a super compelling problem, i.e. a major anomaly that has got the capacity, is painful enough in the industry, that has enough people in the industry, enough thought leaders worried about how it's going to be solved to have an impact. But in reality, this is a, I'm just thinking, can I? Yeah. This is a bad place to be playing. Yeah, you don't want to be fighting against most traditional industries or stable industries at the height of their strength. I think the next worst place is in process. Yeah, because most startups are playing around with product or service innovation, new products or new services, solving problems in new and interesting ways. Yep. When an industry is into process innovation, I really wish I could do this better. When an industry is into process innovation, they've already had that debate about the product innovations. They've already had that debate about the service innovations. So what will tend to happen, you've got to be so much better than everybody else, because everybody else is the industry is moving towards quite rapidly how to do things more efficiently. And if you can't probably give a 5 to 10 fold increase in productivity, it's not going to be good enough, because the process innovation gains that you're going to get from the types of process innovations that we know about already are going to do that and more. So you've got a much higher barrier, yeah, up here to get over if you want to be doing product or service innovation in this space. Is an industry stabilized, solidifies. So that's another bad place. So obviously that's a classic. Can I change the pen color? Oops, bear with me. Messing this up. Ink color. Let's go into. No, we've got too much green already on the screen. Bear with me. Ink color. So let's go for blue. So this is obviously a good place. Lots of people are doing it there, and this is also a good place, because traditional industries are breaking apart. They're falling down, and out of the chaos of a declining empire often comes new empires, because they haven't got there are too many people attacking in too many places, and they haven't got the ability to fight you all off now. So this is a time where it is great to have a classic niching society, niching approach, and just niching strategy, and just go and start targeting a little bit out of a traditional industries structure. Yeah, they will sort of withdraw in onto themselves, because it's making their exterior lines, their frontier, easier to defend, and they'll slowly reduce, much like the steel industry did. Because if you think about how the steel industry works, for example, what the steel industry did was fundamentally their original value proposition back here was, we provide better structural value than anybody else. We provide something that's tougher and far cheaper than any of the alternatives. Yeah, going through here, that was true. But then they said, we focus on a particular material, which is steel. Whereas if they said, we focus on providing tough, light construction materials, for lots of things, or tough light fabrication materials for products and services. They could have then gone into plastics, into aluminium, into titanium, and lots of other things, but they chose to stick with a particular metal. So you need to be careful about it. Right, so the final space, product innovation. Now, I'm a lot less confident about this, because if you're playing in a space where there's a vast amount of product innovation, you're in the middle of the gold rush. You are one gold miner amongst another 20,000 gold miners, hoping that you are going to be the one that finds the mother lode. Who is going to find that big gold nugget? Yeah. What are the chances that it's going to be you? How can you stitch the market in your favour in the way that you want to go? And that's pretty doubtful, because there is just too much competition here. So that's why I don't like it. I think that could be different if you've got if you've not only got good at product innovation, but you've got the marketing skills and possibly the business model innovation skills to be able to enable your product to stand out, so that you're able to climb up this slope a lot faster than everybody else. So essentially you're adopting a fast second strategy compared to other businesses. So that's where playing. So as a startup, as an entrepreneur, what this means at a meta level is that you need to be choosing the battlefield. This is all about choosing the battlefield, right? If you just jumped in here, just a quick reminder, my name is Denis Oakley, and what I'm doing here is talking about business model innovation. When and where is the best place for startups to be attacking established markets, established industries, and how to do it. And what we've talked about so far, we've talked about the process of the life cycle of a business, and we've looked at different stages in the business as to when is the best place to attack it. And we've said that the best place to start being a startup attacking an industry is either coming out from left field, looking for disruptive innovations that are going to be really challenging it, that are really quite different from stuff that's happening up here, or when markets, existing markets, are already starting to fail, and you're coming up with something great, pretty new. It's not a good idea to be attacking somebody at the height of their strength. I mean, imagine attacking the Roman Empire at the height of its strength, or use a modern example, being Iran and going and having a shootout with the US 6th Fleet in the Persian Gulf. It's just not going to end well. Yeah, but if you go into asymmetrical warfare and you get to start playing, these areas work a lot better. So how do you know? I mean, one of the questions that I get asked quite a lot is, how do you know? The best thing to do is to look at trends and company reports. Firstly, I tend to take top 4 to 5 companies in an industry, and I get look at the annual reports over a period of, say, 10 or 20 years. Not every year, but just jump out through every 5 years and look at don't look at the financials, don't really care about those, but looking at the chairman's statement, looking about the forward prognosis, and you're picking out what are the problems, what are the patterns. For example, I was looking at the palm oil industry recently, and I did exactly this. And the things that jumped out for me were land quality, difficulty in automation, yields not increasing, and what was the other, lack of labour. And it was those four things, and they came up in report after report in different countries in over a long time period. And you could see the industry, it was mature, it matured probably by about 1950, and it's now into this long decline, and it doesn't have good answers to those anomalies. And so when you see those anomalies, I think I'm happier calling them anomalies rather than trends, because an anomaly, coming back to Thomas Kuhn, basically an anomaly is a piece of data that a current theory can't explain. It's not a change in the way that the world is working. It can be, but it is something that they have not yet managed to find a problem, solution for. So why haven't palm oil yields increased despite genetic engineering, despite CRISPR, despite agronomics, despite plantation nurseries, despite increased fertilizer, improved fertilizers, etc.? Why hasn't it increased for 70 years? That's a big problem with that industry. Why hasn't it? And that is not a trend. It's a problem. And that's the kind of thing that you're looking for. You're looking for things like that come out of the patterns that in most industries the problems have been, let me get my highlighter back, the problems have been around for a long time, and they've become so much part of the thing, they're part of reality, that they've become the boundaries, that people are seeing them less as a problem and more as just the way that things are. So for example, if you live in a farm, say in the mountains, and there's a really rough and wide and dangerous river on the side and really fertile land on the other, for a long time it's a problem that you can't build a bridge across the river to get to the fertile land on the other side. But after a while you don't realise that the river's a barrier and that there's fertile land on the other side. You just farm your own land. You stop that because you've never been able to solve it. That area over the other side of the river stops being so important. It stops being real to you. And this blindness up here is what you're looking for. These problems, these things, the way that they start to see it is part of the structure of reality, and it is a perceptual problem rather than a fundamental real. That offers huge opportunity for you to sort of start coming in and coming up with the disruptive innovations, and this fundamentally is what you are looking for, these big long-term pains. Then obviously you've got to delve down into the particular companies to validate and test the pains, but it's this anomaly hunting. A word on trends. Trends are more things like the changing global warming, temperature getting hotter every year, changes in demographics, fewer young people, more old people, fewer Catholics, more Catholics, increased religiosity or not, increased obesity or not. These are trends. We may or may not know how to solve some of these trends, but these are how behavior of someone or something is going to change over the next X years, and your business model may or may not be able to solve them. An anomaly is quite different in that respect. It is something that the existing business model isn't able to solve, has never been able to solve, was able to solve once but can't now, or increasingly as a trend And if you imagine a trend as basically a river washing down through the countryside, and it's uncovering new rocks, new barriers that are stopping the river going the course that it wants, and this is what the anomalies are. So everything that a startup needs to be doing is looking for these anomalies, identify the anomalies, understand the deep problems within the anomalies, and then solve them. So starting to wrap up a little bit now, what we have for startups is the focus, bear with me, what we have with startups then is the need to validate these anomalies. You need to basically start with the anomaly and then hunt out the problems. If you just say, I've got an idea for a product innovation, I've got an idea for a service innovation, then you're just playing. And I see a lot of the startups I work with, they have no idea of this, and they just randomly choose. So you might have an idea for a product innovation, but if you're playing around in this area, boom, you're dead. If you're playing around in this area, boom, you're dead. If you're playing around in this area, wow, you've got to be so much fucking better than everybody else, and a far second, that boom, you're dead. And this is absolutely critical. That's why I say it's all about choosing your battleground, because if you're not fighting from ambush like you are here, because remember the disparity, you're the mosquito smeared on the table, they're the big finger, well, not that big, but hey, that has barely even feels the mosquito. Yeah, you have to fight from the position of strength, and really this is where your possession of strength is. So to start with, one, look for the industry that has got the anomalies, has got the pain point that you can start ripping apart. Two, delve into the pains, and then three, start developing your products and your service solutions that exploit that. And so this is how clever, smart entrepreneurs actually use the business life cycle to really be getting a handle on when they fight. I actually have a copy of, oh no, this is reverse Sun Tzu, The Art of War, just by my desk, and it comes back to this: choosing where to fight is half the battle. Yeah, because we fundamentally as entrepreneurs have trivial amounts of resources. Even if you get $5 or $10 million from a VC, that peanuts is fuck all in the wider scheme of the markets that you're trying to play with. So you need to find a position of strength, a position of opportunity, and that is over that. I think I said pretty much enough. I'm starting to waffle a little bit, so that's usually a good sign that I need to cut myself short and stop talking. So just to sum up, I'm Denis Oakley. As you know, I focus on business model innovation, on business model strategy, helping startups and corporates and other people do new ventures. If you like what you're hearing, come over to my website, denis-oakley.com, Dennis with one N, Oakley like the sunglasses. Sign up for my newsletter, there is a link below, and please do subscribe. Subscribing means that I can keep on doing these videos and providing a little bit of insight and wisdom. Comment, do comment below. I try and answer all the comments that you give me, and if you've got a question about business models, send me an email, dennis@denis-oakley.com, and I'll do my best to answer you. I hope you have an absolutely amazing day, and good luck. Choose the right place to fight your battles.